The massive space station Harmony 7 floated in the darkness between stars, like a silver wheel spinning slowly in the void. Inside its gleaming corridors, representatives from dozens of alien worlds walked side by side. The year was 2387, and humanity had finally earned its place among the stars. Commander Park. Jinwoo stood at attention outside Conference Room Alpha, his black dress uniform crisp and clean. The Korean SEAL had been chosen personally by Earth's command to guard the most important diplomatic mission in human history. His dark eyes scanned the hallway, watching for any sign of trouble. 20 years of military service had taught him to trust his instincts. And right now, those instincts were telling him something was wrong. Behind the sealed doors, Ambassador Lee So-min was trying to negotiate humanity's first major trade agreement with the Galactic Coalition. Earth needed access to rare minerals found only on distant worlds. In return, humans offered their advanced computer technology and medical knowledge. It should have been a simple deal, but nothing in galactic politics was ever simple. Park touched the communication device in his ear. "Status report," he said quietly. "All clear on levels 12 through 15. Came the voice of his partner, Lieutenant Kim Dong-yoon. The younger man was stationed 3 floors below, monitoring the security feeds. The Vorthok delegation arrived 10 minutes ago. They brought a lot of guards. Park frowned. The Vorthok were reptilian warriors from the Outer Rim territories. They controlled 3 star systems through military might and had a reputation for solving problems with violence. Most species in the coalition gave them a wide berth. Park had studied their files during the long journey to Harmony 7. What he learned made him uneasy. The Vorthok stood nearly 8 feet tall and weighed as much as 3 humans. Their scales were as hard as armor plating, and their claws could slice through steel. They had conquered their neighbors through brute force and believed that physical strength was the only measure of worth. To them, humans looked weak and fragile. Conference room doors slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Lee stepped out, her face tight with frustration. She was a small woman in her 50s. But Park had seen her stare down corporate executives and military generals without flinching. If she looked worried, the situation was bad. "Commander," she said, walking over to him, "we have a problem." "It's kind of problem, ma'am?" Lee glanced back at the conference room. Through the open doors, Park could see massive reptilian figures moving around the table. Their scales gleamed under the bright lights, and their yellow eyes tracked every movement in the room. "The Vorthok war chief is being deliberately insulting," Lee explained. "He keeps calling us soft meat and weak spawn," his translator says. "It's just their way of speaking, but I think he's testing us." Park nodded. He had expected this. The Vorthok respected only strength, and they saw humans as inferior. "What do you need me to do? Just stay alert. If things go badly, we might need to leave quickly." She turned to go back into the room, but Park caught her arm gently. "Ma'am, with respect, running away will only make things worse. The Vorthok will see it as proof that we're cowards." Lee studied his face. "What are you suggesting?" "Let me come in with you. Show them that humans don't. Back down." After a moment, she nodded. "Stay close, and don't react to anything they say." They walked into the conference room together. The space was designed to accommodate different alien species, with adjustable chairs and atmospheric controls. The human delegation sat on one side of the long table while the Vorthok occupied the other. The difference in size was striking. Even sitting down, the reptilian warriors loomed over the humans. At the head of the Vorthok group sat War Chief Gorthok, the render. His scales were darker than the others, almost black, and old battle scars crisscrossed his massive frame. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "The soft ones return," Gorthak said, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "I was beginning to think you had fled like frightened prey." Ambassador Lee took her seat. Calmly, "We're ready to continue negotiations, War Chief." "Negotiations," Gorthok repeated, making the word sound like a curse. "You speak of trading your metal trinkets for our sacred stones. What makes you think the mighty Vorthok need anything from such weak creatures?" Dr. Yoon Min-ho, the mission's science advisor, leaned forward. "Our medical technology could save thousands of lives in your territories. Our computers could improve your mining operations by 40%. Gorthak's laugh was like the roar of an angry beast. Life and death are decided by strength, not by your magic boxes. The weak deserve to die. Park felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. Round the table, other alien delegates watched the exchange with interest. The insect-like Chitauri clicked their mandibles nervously. The crystalline Etherians pulsed with different colors, probably discussing the situation through their strange, light-based language. Nevertheless, Ambassador Lee said patiently, our offer stands. Perhaps we could start with a small trade agreement to build trust between our peoples. Trust, Gorthak spat. Trust is earned through blood and battle, not through words and papers. Your species has proven nothing except that you can build ships and speak politely. He stood up suddenly, his massive frame casting a shadow over the human delegation. The other Vorthok warriors rose with him, their claws scraping against the metal table. I have heard stories about your warriors, Gorthak continued, his yellow eyes fixed on Park. They say humans fought wars on your homeworld for thousands of years, but looking at you now, I see only weakness. Park remained perfectly still. Every instinct told him to respond to the challenge, but his training held him in check. This was a diplomatic mission, not a battlefield. Gorthak took a step around the table, moving closer to the humans. The other alien delegates shifted nervously in their seats. Violence on Harmony 7 was strictly forbidden, but the Vorthok had a reputation for ignoring rules they didn't like. Tell me, little warrior, Gorthak said, stopping directly in front of Park. What would you do if I struck you down right here? Would you beg for mercy? Would you cry for your mother? Ambassador Lee started to speak, but Park raised his hand. Slightly, his voice was calm and steady when he replied. I would get back up, War Chief. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Gorthak threw back his massive head and laughed. Brave words from such a small creature. Let us see if your body is as strong as your tongue. Before anyone could react, Gorthak's clawed hand swept through the air like a sledgehammer, striking Park across the face with enough force to shatter human bones. The sound echoed through the conference room like a gunshot. The conference room fell silent as death. Every eye in the room stared at Commander Park Jinwoo, waiting to see him collapse to the floor. The Vorthok strike had been powerful enough to kill most creatures in the galaxy. War Chief Gorthak smiled, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth, expecting to see the human crumple like paper. Instead, Park stood exactly where he had been before. His head had turned slightly from the impact, and a thin line of blood ran from the corner of his mouth. His feet had not moved. His back remained straight. His dark eyes looked directly into Gorthak's yellow ones without fear. The silence stretched longer. Ambassador Lee's hand covered her mouth in shock. Dr. Yoon Minho had gone pale as snow. Even the other Vorthok warriors looked surprised. There, War Chief's strikes could break stone, yet this small human remained standing. Park slowly wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand. When he spoke, his voice was as calm as still water. Is that all, War Chief? Gorthak's smile vanished. His scaled face twisted with rage and confusion. No creature had ever taken one of his strikes and remained conscious, let alone standing upright and speaking clearly. The other alien delegates began whispering among themselves in dozens of different languages. The Chitauri clicked their mandibles rapidly, a sign of extreme excitement. The Etherians pulsed with bright blue light, which meant they were amazed. Even the cold and calculating Nexari leaned forward in their chairs to get a better look at the human who had survived a Vorthok deathblow. Impossible, Gorthak growled. His clawed hands clenched into fists. You should be dead. But I'm not, Park replied simply. Ambassador Lee found her voice. War Chief, this assault on a diplomatic representative is completely unacceptable. I demand an immediate apology, an assurance that it will not happen again. Gorthak ignored her completely. His attention was focused entirely on Park. The human survival had shaken something deep inside the reptilian warrior's mind. In Vorthok culture, physical dominance was everything. A leader who could not defeat his enemies in combat was no leader at all. You mock me, Gorthak said, his voice rising to a roar. You pretend to be strong when you are nothing but weak flesh. I will not be humiliated by an inferior species." Park remained perfectly still. His military training had taught him to stay calm under pressure. But this was different from anything he had faced on Earth. He was not just representing himself or his unit now. The entire human race was being judged by how he handled this moment. "I mock no one," Park said. "I simply stood where I was standing." The war chief's tail lashed behind him like an angry snake. Around the table, his warriors began to growl low in their throats. The sound filled the room like distant thunder.
"Oh yeah."
"You will face me in combat," Gorthok declared suddenly. "Single battle in the arena, no weapons, no armor, just strength against strength. When I crush your bones and tear your soft flesh, all will. Know that the Vorthok are supreme." The room erupted in shocked voices. The arena Gorthok spoke of was located in the lower levels of Harmony 7. It was used for settling disputes between species when diplomacy failed. Combat there was legal, under coalition law, but it was also usually fatal for the loser. Ambassador Lee stood up quickly. "Absolutely not. Commander Park is here as part of a diplomatic mission. He's not a gladiator for your entertainment." "The challenge has been issued," Gorthok said, his eyes never leaving Park's face. "Only the human can accept or refuse. Choose. Wisely, soft one. Accept, and you die with honor. Refuse, and your entire species will be marked as cowards throughout the galaxy." Park knew the war chief was right. Word of this confrontation would spread to every coalition world within days. If he backed down now, it would confirm what many alien species already believed about humans. They would see Earth's people as weak, creatures who hid behind technology and pretty words. Dr. Yoon Minho leaned over to whisper urgently in Park's ear. "Commander, you cannot seriously be considering this. The Vorthok are 3 times our size and 10 times our strength. Their scales are like natural armor. Their claws can cut through steel. This would be suicide." Park nodded slowly, acknowledging. The doctor's words, everything Yoon said was true. In a contest of pure physical strength, no human could match a Vorthok warrior. But Park had not survived 20 years as a Navy SEAL by relying only on strength. When he asked simply, Gorthok's smile returned, sharp and cruel. "Tomorrow at midday, the arena will be prepared. All species representatives will attend to witness your destruction." "Commander, no," Ambassador Lee said firmly. "I forbid this. We'll file a formal complaint with the Coalition Council. This is assault, not diplomacy." Park turned to face her. "Ma'am, with respect, filing complaints will take months. And then, the damage will be done. Every species in the galaxy will know that humans cannot defend themselves when challenged." He looked around the room at the various alien delegates. Some watched with curiosity, others with barely hidden excitement. The idea of seeing a human fight a Vorthok was clearly entertaining to them. Besides, Park continued, the war chief is right about one thing. The challenge has been issued. In their culture, refusing would be seen as an admission of weakness. Ambassador Lee's face was tight with worry, and accepting it will likely get you killed. "Maybe," Park admitted, "but that's my choice to make." Gorthok laughed again, the sound echoing off the conference room walls. "Excellent. I was beginning to think all humans were cowards. At least one of you has some spirit, even if it will not save you." The war chief turned to address the other alien representatives. "Spread the word throughout the station. Tomorrow, you will witness the true power of the Vorthok. This human thinks his soft flesh can stand against scales and claws. We shall see how long his courage lasts when I begin tearing him apart." Several of the alien delegates immediately activated their communication devices, eager to share news of the coming battle. Within minutes, every creature on Harmony 7 would know about the challenge. Dr. Yoon Minho grabbed Park's arm. "Commander, please reconsider. There has to be another way."
"Owls."
Park gently removed the doctor's hand. "There is no other way, doctor. Sometimes you have to fight to earn respect." As the alien delegates began filing out of the conference room, chattering excitedly about tomorrow's combat, Ambassador Lee approached Park. "I cannot order you not to do this," she said quietly, "but I can ask you as a friend. Please don't throw your life away for pride." Park looked at her with steady eyes. Ma'am, this isn't about pride. This is about showing the galaxy that humans are not prey. If I back down now, every predator species out there will see us as easy targets. Gorthak was the last to leave, his massive frame blocking the doorway for a moment. Rest well tonight, little human. It will be your last. After the war chief departed, the room fell quiet again. Only the human delegation remained, and the weight of what was coming settled over them like a heavy blanket. What do we do now? Dr. Yoon asked. Park straightened his uniform jacket and wiped away the last traces of blood from his face. Now we prepare for war. The arena level of Harmony 7 buzzed with excitement like a disturbed hive. Creatures from across the galaxy had gathered to witness what many believed would be the shortest fight in Coalition history. The massive circular chamber could hold 5,000 spectators. Every seat was filled. Commander Park Jin-woo sat alone in the human preparation room, his eyes closed in meditation. The small space was stark and white, containing only a bench and a water dispenser. He had spent the morning in prayer and mental preparation, just as he had before every dangerous mission in his 20-year career, 3 levels above ambassador. Lee Salmon paced back and forth in the observation deck reserved for diplomats. Through the thick glass walls, she could see the arena floor far below. The fighting circle was 50 meters across, surrounded by energy barriers that would contain the violence but allow spectators to watch safely. The betting pools are heavily against us, Dr. Yoon Minho reported, checking his tablet. Current odds are 800 to 1 in favor of the Vorthok. Lee stopped pacing. Some species are betting their entire annual budgets on Gorthok. Inexory alone have wagered 50 million credits. Yoon shook his head sadly. They're treating this like entertainment, not a fight for human dignity. Down in the arena, alien vendors moved through the crowd selling food and souvenirs. The atmosphere was more like a festival than a deadly combat. Holographic displays showed slow-motion replays of famous Vorthok victories from previous years. In each one, reptilian warriors destroyed their opponents with brutal efficiency. The Chitauri delegation had brought noisemakers that sounded like screaming metal. The crystalline Etherians pulsed with colors that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Even the normally peaceful Valdari had sent representatives, their tentacles writhing with anticipation. In the Vorthok preparation chamber, where Chief Gorthok the Renda was putting on a show for his followers, the massive reptilian warrior flexed his muscles while his subordinates chanted battle songs in their harsh language. His black scales gleamed with oil that would make him harder to grab during the fight. The soft one thinks he can match the might of Gorthak, the war chief roared to his cheering warriors. Today I will show the galaxy why the Vorthok rule through strength alone. His lieutenant, a scarred veteran named Kronak, approached with a concerned expression. War chief, perhaps we should not underestimate this human. He survived your strike yesterday without falling. Orthek's laugh echoed through the chamber. A lucky accident, nothing more. His bones are hollow like a bird's. His flesh is soft like fruit. When I am finished with him, there will be nothing left to bury. The other Vorthok warriors roared their approval, but Kronak still looked worried. Had studied the human military records that were publicly available in the Coalition database. What he found troubled him. Humans had fought wars continuously for thousands of years. Their planet was a death world with hostile weather, dangerous animals, and scarce resources. Yet somehow, they had not only survived, but thrived. Kronak tried again. Their military records show impressive achievements. This Park Jin-woo has survived over 40 combat missions on his homeworld. He has killed enemies in dozens of different ways. Gorthok waved dismissively. Fighting other weak humans means nothing. I have conquered entire worlds. I've slain creatures that would eat 100 humans for breakfast. This will be over in seconds. Meanwhile, in the human preparation room, Park finished his meditation and stood up slowly. His body felt loose and ready. His mind was clear and focused. He had spent hours studying everything Dr. Yoon had taught him about Vorthok anatomy and fighting techniques. The door chimed softly, and Lieutenant Kim Dong-yoon entered carrying a small bag of equipment. The Coalition medical team cleared these items, Kim said, setting the bag on the bench. basic first aid supplies and energy drinks. Nothing that could be considered a weapon or enhancement. Park nodded and pulled out one of the energy drinks. The liquid was bitter, but would help maintain his blood sugar during what might be a long fight. He had eaten a light breakfast of rice and vegetables, enough for energy but not so much that it would slow him down. Sir Kim said quietly, "The whole human fleet is watching. Every ship, every station, every colony. Earth Command is broadcasting this live to the homeworld." The weight of that knowledge settled on Park's shoulders. Billions of humans were counting on him to represent their species with honor. Win or lose, his actions in the next hour would define how the galaxy saw humanity for generations to come. "Any final intelligence on Gorthok Park?" asked Kim, consulted his tablet. He's fought in the arena 12 times over the past 5 years. 12 victories, all by death or permanent injury to his opponents. His preferred tactic is to rush forward and overwhelm enemies with pure aggression. He relies on his natural armor and strength to protect him. Weaknesses? Dr. Yoon identified several potential pressure points in Vorthok anatomy. But we don't know if they'll work on someone as large as Gorthok. Their balance seems to depend heavily on their tail. Their joints bend differently than human joints, which might make certain holds possible. Park absorbed this information, filing it away in his tactical mind. He had fought larger and stronger opponents before, though never quite this large or this strong. The key would be to avoid Gorthok's strengths while exploiting any weaknesses. He could find the arena's announcement system crackled to life, speaking in the common galactic trade language that all coalition species understood. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications. Welcome to Harmony 7 Arena. Today's combat will be between Warchief Gorthak, the Render of the Vorthak, Empire, and Commander Park Jinwoo of the Human Federation." The crowd roared with excitement. Through the walls, Park could hear thousands of alien voices cheering, most of them clearly supporting his opponent. Combat rules are as follows: no weapons, no armor, no outside assistance. Victory by submission, unconsciousness, or death. Medical teams stand ready for both fighters. Kim clasped Park's shoulder. "Sir, whatever happens out there, know that you've already made us proud. Standing up to that brute yesterday took more courage than most people have in their entire lives." Smiled slightly. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Take care of the ambassador while I'm gone." "She'll be fine, sir. You just focus on coming back alive." The arena doors began to slide open with a deep mechanical rumble. Bright lights flooded into the preparation room, and the sound of the crowd grew louder. Park could see the fighting. Circle in the distance, marked by glowing energy barriers. Introducing first, from the Outer Rim territories, undefeated in arena combat, Warchief Gorthak the Render. The Vorthak entrance was pure theater. Gorthak emerged from the opposite tunnel like a walking nightmare, his 8-foot frame casting long shadows across the arena floor. His black scales absorbed the light, making him look like a creature carved from living darkness. He raised his clawed hands above his head and roared, a sound that made the arena walls vibrate. The crowd went wild. Alien species that had never agreed on anything were united in their expectation of seeing the human destroyed. Signs and banners waved throughout the stands, most showing Vorthok symbols or images of their victories. And his opponent from the Sol System, Commander Park Jinwoo of the Human Federation. Park stepped out of his tunnel into the blazing arena lights. Compared to Gorthak's dramatic entrance, he moved quietly and calmly. He wore simple black exercise clothes that allowed maximum freedom of movement. No flashy gestures, no roaring, no attempt to intimidate. He simply walked to his designated starting position and waited. The contrast was striking. Where Gorthok looked like a monster from ancient myths, Park appeared almost ordinary. The size difference was enormous. Standing across from each other, in the fighting circle, they looked like a child facing an adult. The crowd's noise died down as both fighters took their positions. In the diplomatic viewing area, Ambassador Lee gripped the railing so tightly her knuckles turned white. Beside her, Dr. Yoon watched through a medical scanner, monitoring Park's vital signs. The arena referee, a floating mechanical sphere. positioned itself above the center of the fighting circle. "Fighters ready," the referee's electronic voice echoed through the chamber. Gorthak dropped into a combat crouch, his claws extended and his tail lashing behind him. Every muscle in his massive body was tensed for violence. His yellow eyes locked onto Park with predatory hunger. Park simply stood upright, his hands loose at his sides, his breathing slow and steady. To most observers, he looked completely unprepared for what was about to happen. The referee's voice boomed across the arena. "Begin combat." Gorthak's roar shook the entire chamber as he charged forward like a living battering ram, claws extended. Ready to end the fight with a single devastating strike that would tear the human apart, Park waited until the last possible second, then moved. The charging Vorthok warrior covered 20 meters in less than 3 seconds. His massive claws swept through the air where Park had been standing just moments before. Instead of finding soft human flesh to tear apart, Gorthak's strike hit nothing. But empty space. Park had moved at the last possible instant, stepping sideways with fluid grace that seemed impossible for such a simple motion. The crowd gasped as the human appeared beside Gorthak like a ghost, completely untouched by the devastating attack that should have ended the fight immediately. Gorthak spun around, confusion flashing across his reptilian features. No creature had ever avoided his opening charge before. His opponents usually froze in terror or tried to block his strike with disastrous results. His human had simply not been there when the claws arrived. "Stand still and die with honor," Gorthak roared, swinging his massive arm in a wide arc, meant to catch Park no matter which direction he moved. Again, Park was not where the strike landed. He ducked under the sweeping claws and moved behind Gorthak, staying close to the larger fighter's body, where the long arms could not reach effectively. For a brief moment, Park's hand touched a pressure point on Gorthak's lower back that Dr. Yoon had identified in his anatomical studies. The warchief's left leg buckled, slightly as nerves sent confused signals to his muscles. It lasted only a second, but it was enough to throw off his balance and make his next attack clumsy and wild. In the diplomatic viewing area, Ambassador Lee leaned forward in amazement. "How is he doing that?" Dr. Yoon checked his tablet, which was tracking both fighters through the arena's sensors. "His movement patterns are incredible. Look at these readings. Park is using exactly the minimum amount of energy needed for each dodge. Gorthak is already breathing harder, but Park's heart rate has barely increased." Down in the arena, the alien spectators were beginning to murmur with surprise. The fight was supposed to be over by now. Instead, the human continued to move around, the Vorthok like water flowing around a rock. Every charge, every swipe, every attempt to grab or crush found nothing but air. Gorthak's frustration grew with each missed attack. His strikes became wilder and less controlled. Sweat began to form on his scaled skin despite the cool arena air. The human was making him look foolish in front of thousands of witnesses. "Onward," Gorthak bellowed. "Face me like a warrior instead of running like prey." Park's response was calm and measured. "I am facing you, Warchief. You simply cannot hit what you cannot catch." The words stung Gorthak's pride worse than any physical blow. He gathered himself for another charge, this time planning to use his full weight to crush the human against the arena wall. No amount of speed could help Park escape if there was nowhere left to run, but Park had no intention of running. As Gorthak thundered forward like a living avalanche, the human did something that shocked every creature watching. He moved toward the charging Vorthok instead of away. At the last second, Park dropped low and rolled between Gorthak's legs. The massive warrior's momentum carried him forward into the energy barrier that surrounded the fighting area. The barrier, held firm, designed to contain much greater forces than one angry reptilian. Gorthak bounced back, dazed and off balance. Before the warchief could recover, Park was already moving again. He grabbed Gorthak's thick tail and used it like a rope to swing himself up onto the reptilian's back. His hands found nerve clusters that Dr. Yoon had mapped out during their preparation sessions. Gorthak howled in pain and surprise as temporary paralysis shot through his right arm. He spun wildly, trying to throw the human off, but Park held on with the grip strength that came from years of climbing ropes and scaling walls during SEAL training. "Impossible! gasped Kronok, Gorthak's lieutenant, from the Vorthok viewing section. How does the human know our anatomy better than we do? The answer was simple, but devastating. While Gorthak had spent the previous day boasting and celebrating his expected victory, the human team had been studying. Dr. Yoon had worked through the night, analyzing every piece of medical data available about Vorthok physiology. Park had memorized the location of every nerve cluster, every joint weakness, every pressure point that might give him an advantage. Knowledge was proving more powerful than brute strength. Park dropped from Gorthak's back as the war chief spun. To face him, the right side of Gorthak's body was still partially numb from the nerve strikes, making his movements awkward and uncoordinated. For the first time in the fight, genuine concern flickered in his yellow eyes. What sorcery is this? Gorthok demanded. How do you know the forbidden places? No sorcery, Park replied, circling slowly around his opponent. Just preparation and training. On my world, we have a saying, know your enemy better than he knows himself. The crowd had fallen almost silent now. The expected slaughter had become something none of them had anticipated. The small human was not only surviving against the mighty Vorthok warrior, he was winning. Creatures who had bet fortunes on Gorthok's easy victory watched in growing horror as their investments crumbled. Gorthok shook his massive head, trying to clear the confusion and focus on the fight. His right arm was beginning to regain feeling, but the temporary weakness had cost him his confidence. This human was unlike any opponent he had ever faced. You cannot run forever, soft one, Gorthok said, but his voice lacked the certainty it had carried before. I am still stronger. I am still larger. Eventually you will make a mistake. Park nodded calmly. You're right about one thing, War Chief. This fight will not last forever. Without warning, Park attacked for the first time. Instead of continuing to dodge and move defensively, he stepped forward and struck. His fist found the soft spot just below Gorthok's armored chest plates that Dr. Yoon had identified as vulnerable. The impact sent shockwaves through the Vorthok's internal organs. Gorthok staggered backward, gasping for breath. Not been powerful enough to seriously injure him, but it had driven all the air from his lungs and left him wheezing. No creature his size should have been able to move fast enough to penetrate his defenses. Park pressed his advantage, moving in close where Gorthok's long reach became a disadvantage. His hands worked like precision instruments, striking nerve points and joint connections with surgical accuracy. Each blow was calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimum energy expenditure. The war chief tried to grab Park in a crushing bear hug, but the human slipped away like smoke. Gorthak's left knee buckled as Park struck a pressure point that temporarily cut off nerve signals to the leg muscles. For a moment, the mighty Vorthok warrior dropped to one knee. The arena erupted in shocked gasps and alien exclamations. Many creatures had never seen a Vorthok forced to kneel before anyone. In their culture, kneeling was a sign of submission and defeat. Even though Gorthok quickly regained his footing, the damage to his reputation was already done. This is impossible, whispered the Chitauri delegation leader. Vorthok warriors do not kneel, they do not show weakness. What manner of creature is this human? In the human viewing area, Ambassador Lee allowed herself a small smile. That, my friend, is a United States Navy SEAL, the finest warrior our species has ever produced. Dr. Yoon was frantically recording everything on his tablet. The other species need to see this. They need to understand that humans are not the weak prey animals they assumed we were. Oh no. Back in the arena, Gorthok had recovered from the knee strike, but his movements were noticeably slower. The constant action was wearing him down faster than he had expected. His heavy body required enormous amounts of energy to move, while Park seemed to glide across the arena floor with minimal effort. You fight like a coward, Gorthok panted, but there was desperation in his voice now. Stand and face me with honor. Parks. The reply was quiet but carried clearly through the silent arena. War Chief, I am giving you more honor than you showed my ambassador yesterday. I could have ended this fight already, but I wanted everyone here to see what happens when you underestimate an opponent. The words hit Gorthok like a physical blow. The human was claiming he could have one already, but had chosen to prolong the fight for educational purposes. The insult was almost unbearable. With a roar of pure rage, Gorthak launched himself forward in one final desperate attack. Every muscle in his massive body was focused on crushing the human who had dared to humiliate him in front of the Galaxy Park. Waited calmly for the charge, his dark eyes measuring distance and timing with the precision of a master craftsman. The end was coming, and everyone in the arena could feel it. Gorthak's final charge was like watching a mountain collapse. His 8-foot frame thundered across the arena floor with the force of a runaway freight train. Every ounce of his remaining strength was focused into this one devastating attack. His claws extended fully, sharp enough to slice through steel. His massive jaws opened wide, revealing rows of teeth designed to tear flesh from bone. The crowd held its breath. This had to be the end. Even if the human had somehow survived until now, there was no way he could escape such overwhelming force. Gorthak was using every weapon nature had given him in one final explosion of violence. Park stood perfectly still as death approached him at 40 miles per hour. His dark eyes tracked Gorthak's movement with the calm precision of a mathematician, solving an equation. 20 years of combat experience had taught him that the most dangerous moment in any fight was also the moment of greatest opportunity. Time seemed to slow as the gap between them closed. 10 meters, 5 meters, 3 meters, at the last possible instant, when Gorthak's claws were inches from his face, Park moved. But instead of dodging to either side as he had done throughout the fight, he did something that shocked every creature watching. He stepped forward and dropped low, using Gorthak's own momentum against him. Park's shoulder connected with Gorthak's leading leg. Just as the Vorthok warrior's weight shifted forward, the impact was perfectly timed, catching Gorthak at the exact moment when his balance was most vulnerable. Physics took over where human strength could not. Gorthak's massive body flew through the air like a meteor. It's completely out of control. His own charging speed, combined with Park's precisely placed leverage, sent him tumbling across the arena floor in a tangle of scales. Claws, in confused roaring, the war chief crashed into the far wall with a sound like thunder. The energy barrier flared as it absorbed the impact, sending ripples of blue light across its surface. For a moment, Gorthak lay stunned, his yellow eyes unfocused, and his breathing labored. The arena was silent except for the war chief's heavy gasps. 50,000 alien spectators stared in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. The mighty Gorthak the Render, conqueror of worlds, lay defeated by a creature one-third his size. Park walked slowly across the arena toward his fallen opponent. There was no triumph in his movements, no celebration or boasting. He approached like a professional completing a job, calm and methodical, even in victory. Gorthak struggled to his feet, shaking his massive head to clear his vision. His scales were scraped and dented from the impact. One of his claws had broken against the wall, leaving a jagged stub that dripped dark blood onto the arena floor. "This is not over," Gorthak growled, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. He was hurt, tired, and for the first time in his life, genuinely afraid of an opponent. "Yes, it is," Park replied quietly. Before Gorthak could react, Park was moving again. But this time there was no dramatic leap or spinning kick. Instead, Park simply walked forward and grabbed Gorthak's thick wrist as the war chief threw a desperate punch. What happened next was a masterpiece of human martial arts. Park used a combination of judo, aikido, and techniques learned during his SEAL training to redirect Gorthak's attack. The Vorthok's own strength became the weapon that defeated him. Park twisted Gorthak's arm using leverage points that Dr. Yoon had identified in Vorthok anatomy. The war chief's elbow joint, designed for crushing blows, was not built to resist rotation in certain directions. With surgical precision, Park applied pressure that forced Gorthak to the ground or risk having his arm broken. Gorthak found himself face down on the arena floor, his arm twisted behind his back in a hold that caused excruciating pain with every movement. His free arm clawed at the ground, trying to find purchase to push himself up, but Park's positioning made resistance impossible. "Submit," Park said calmly, applying just enough pressure to make his point clear. "This can end now with your honor." intact, or I can continue until something breaks permanently. The war chief's mind raced with rage and confusion. In his entire life, no creature had ever put him in such a helpless position. His warrior's pride screamed at him to fight until death, rather than surrender to a weak species. But the pain in his twisted arm was becoming unbearable. Worse than the physical discomfort was the growing realization that he had been completely outclassed. This human had not won through luck or trickery. He had won through superior skill, preparation, and tactical thinking. I will not submit to prey. Gorthak gasped through gritted teeth. Park's response was to apply slightly more pressure to the arm lock. Gorthak's roar of pain echoed through the silent arena. War Chief, Park said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. Look around you. Every species in the galaxy is watching this moment. You can end it with dignity, or you can end it with a broken arm and permanent shame. The choice is yours. Gorthak's yellow eyes swept the arena. Thousands of alien faces stared down at him. Witnessing his defeat, his own Vorthok warriors watched from their section with expressions of shock and disbelief. Their mighty leader was pinned to the ground by a creature they had dismissed as harmless. The truth was inescapable. He had lost, not through bad luck or treachery, but through being comprehensively outfought by a superior opponent. The human had studied Vorthok physiology, learned their weaknesses, and exploited them with ruthless efficiency. More importantly, the human had shown mercy. Park could have inflicted permanent damage at several points during the fight, but had chosen restraint. Even now, with Gorthok completely helpless, Park was offering him a chance to surrender with some measure of dignity intact. I yield, Gorthok, whispered, the words barely audible. The arena's referee, floating overhead, amplified the surrender for all to hear. War Chief Gorthok, the render yields. Victory to Commander Park Jinwoo of the Human Federation. Park immediately released the arm lock and stepped back, allowing Gorthok to rise slowly to his feet. The Vorthok warrior favored his twisted arm, but nothing was broken. True to his word, Park had ended the fight without causing permanent injury. 4. A long moment, the two fighters faced each other in the center of the arena. The size difference was still dramatic, but now everyone understood that size was not the only measure of strength. Gorthak looked into Park's dark eyes and saw something. He had never expected to find in a human respect. Not fear, not hatred, not triumph over a defeated enemy. Just the professional respect of one warrior acknowledging another's skill. You fight with honor, Gorthak said slowly, the words difficult for him to speak. I was wrong about your species. Park bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that surprised many in the watching crowd. You fought bravely, War Chief. Any warrior who faces the unknown with courage deserves respect. The exchange was broadcast across the galaxy, and its impact was immediate. Species that had dismissed humans as weak technology-dependent creatures began to reconsider their assumptions. The image of a small human showing respect to his defeated opponent, while demonstrating superior combat skills, would be remembered for generations. In the diplomatic viewing area, Ambassador Lee felt tears of pride in her eyes. Park had not just won a fight. He had changed how the entire galaxy viewed humanity. Dr. Yoon was frantically taking notes, already planning his report to Earth Command. This changes everything, he whispered. Every species will want to study human combat techniques now. We're not prey anymore. As medical teams rushed onto the arena floor to check both fighters, Park helped Gorthok toward the exit. The gesture of sportsmanship was not lost on the watching aliens. Here was a species that could defeat their enemies and then show them kindness. The crowd began to cheer. Slowly at first, then building to a thunderous roar that shook the station's superstructure. Creatures who had bet against the human found themselves applauding his victory anyway. They had witnessed something historic. The moment when humanity proved it belonged among the stars, not just as builders and traders, but as warriors worthy of respect. Gorthak paused at the arena exit and turned back to Park. Human, he said, his voice carrying across the still cheering crowd. Your species has earned the respect of the Vorthok. We will remember this day. Park nodded once, then walked toward the human preparation area where Ambassador Lee and Dr. Yoon waited for him. The fight was over. The war for human dignity in the galaxy had just begun. 3 weeks after the arena fight that shook the galaxy, Harmony 7 had become the most famous space station in known space. Ships from dozens of worlds arrived daily, their passengers eager to see the place where a human had defeated a Vorthok, war chief, in single combat. The station's gift shops could not keep up with demand for recordings of the fight. Commander Park Jinwoo sat in the human delegation's quarters, reading reports from Earth Command on his tablet. The victory had changed everything for humanity's position in the Galactic Coalition. Trade agreements that had been stalled for months were suddenly moving forward. Military partnerships that seemed impossible were now being discussed openly. "Hey, sir, you have visitors," Lieutenant Kim Dong-yoon announced from the doorway. Park looked up to see a group of young Vorthok warriors entering the room. They moved with careful respect, their heads slightly bowed in a gesture that would have been unthinkable before the fight. Leading them was Kronok, Gorthek's former lieutenant, who now served as temporary war chief while his predecessor recovered. From his injuries, Commander Park, Kronok said in carefully practiced human language, "We come to request instruction." Park set down his tablet and studied the reptilian faces before him. These were elite warriors from one of the galaxy's most feared military forces, and they were asking a human to teach them. "What kind of instruction?" Park asked. "Your combat methods?" one of the younger Vorthok replied eagerly. "The way you used our own strength against us, the pressure points that caused paralysis, the leverage techniques that made size meaningless. We wish to learn these secrets." Park considered this request carefully. Teaching alien species human combat techniques could be dangerous if they were ever used against Earth, but it could also build bridges between cultures that had viewed each other with suspicion. "I will teach you," Park said finally, "but only if you agree to certain conditions." Kronok nodded immediately. "Name them." "First, these techniques are never to be used against innocent beings. You will teach other species that humans are to be treated with respect. Third, you will help us build better understanding between our peoples." The Vorthok warriors agreed without hesitation. Word of their training sessions spread quickly through the station, and soon representatives from other species were asking to observe. The Chitauri wanted to understand how a smaller creature could defeat a larger one. The Etherians were fascinated by the psychological aspects of Park's victory. Meanwhile, in the Coalition Council chambers, Ambassador Lee Soman was experiencing a very different kind of success. The same alien diplomats who had barely acknowledged human presence 3 weeks ago now sought her opinions on military matters. Trade negotiations that had dragged on for months were completed in days. "The rare mineral rights we discussed," said Council Member Vexa of the Nexari Union. "We are prepared to offer terms far more favorable than previously suggested." Lee kept her expression neutral, though internally she was celebrating. "Ash! What? Changed your mind? Your Commander Park has demonstrated that humans possess capabilities we had not recognized. A species that can produce such warriors deserves our respect and partnership." The irony was not lost on Lee. One soldier's victory in personal combat had accomplished more for human diplomacy than years of careful negotiations. The galaxy understood strength. Park had shown them that humans possessed it in abundance. Dr. Yoon Minho was busiest of all. His detailed analysis of the fight had become required reading in xenobiology departments across the Coalition. Universities were offering him research positions, and military academies wanted him to develop new training programs based on human combat principles. "The applications are incredible," Yoon told Lee during one of their daily briefings. "Species that have been enemies for centuries are asking us to mediate their disputes. They want human negotiators because they believe we understand both diplomacy and warfare." But not all the changes were positive. On the Vorthok homeworld of Korath Prime, Gorthok the Render faced the most difficult challenge of his life. His defeat by a human had shattered the foundations of Vorthok society, which was built entirely on the concept of physical supremacy. Traditional Vorthok law demanded that Gorthok face exile or death for bringing shame to his clan. However, the way he had conducted himself after the defeat, showing respect for his opponent and accepting Park's mercy with dignity, had earned him unexpected support from younger Vorthok, who were beginning to question their old ways. War Chief, his son Gorthok Minor, said during a private meeting, "Many of us believe you showed greater strength in defeat than you ever did in victory. You chose to learn rather than rage. You chose wisdom over pride." The elder Gorthok looked at his offspring with surprise. "You do not seek to challenge me for leadership?" "I seek to follow your example," the younger reptilian replied. "The humans have taught us that true strength comes from adapting to new situations, not just from crushing everything in your path." This philosophical shift was spreading throughout Vorthok space. Young warriors, who had once sought glory through conquests, were now studying human history, trying to understand how such a small species had become so formidable. They learned about human wars, but also about human cooperation, sacrifice, and innovation. Back on Harmony 7, Park had become something of a celebrity, despite his attempts to maintain a low profile. Alien reporters constantly requested interviews. Children from various species made drawings of the fight and sent them to him. Military officers from across the galaxy sought his advice on combat training. Sir Kim reported during one of their evening briefings, "Earth Command wants to know if you're interested in establishing a new training program. They want to create a school where human instructors can teach coalition species our military techniques." Park considered this carefully. It would mean spending years away from Earth, but it could also prevent future conflicts by building understanding. Between species, tell them yes, he decided. "But I want to choose my own staff. We'll need instructors who understand that we're not just teaching combat techniques. We're teaching them about human values like honor, mercy, and respect for opponents." As word of the proposed training academy spread, applications poured in from across the galaxy. The Vorthok sent their entire young warrior class. Chitauri wanted to learn human teamwork methods. Even the proud Nexari, who had never acknowledged any species as their equal, requested admission for their elite guards. The academy would be built on Harmony 7 itself, turning the space station into a symbol of cooperation rather than conflict. Species that had been enemies would train side by side, learning not just how to fight like humans, but how to think like them. 6 months after the fight, Park stood in the observation deck where Ambassador Lee had once watched him face Gorthok. Now he was watching the first class of mixed-species students learning basic human combat principles. Vorthok warriors practiced alongside Chitauri soldiers and Etherian guardians. All of them focused on understanding rather than conquering. "Remarkable," said a familiar voice behind him. Park turned to see Gorthok approaching slowly. The former war chief still bore scars from their fight, but his yellow eyes held a wisdom that had not been there before. "What is remarkable?" Park asked. "You defeated me completely," Gorthok said, "but instead of destroying me, you built something new. This academy, the partnerships between our species, the respect humans now command throughout the galaxy, of it came from a moment when you chose mercy over vengeance." Park nodded thoughtfully. "On my world, we believe that true victory comes not from destroying your enemies, but from turning them into friends." Gorthok watched the mixed training session below. "Your species has much to teach us about strength, and yours has much too." "Teach us about courage," Park replied. "It takes great bravery to admit when you are wrong and change your ways." As they stood together watching the future of galactic cooperation unfold before them, both warriors understood that their fight had been about more than personal combat. It had been about the price of arrogance and the power of respect. The legend of their battle would be told for generations. But the real victory was happening right now in the training halls below, where former enemies learned to see each other. As equals, humanity had earned its place among the stars not through conquest, but through the simple act of showing that strength and honor could coexist. And across the galaxy, species that had once viewed humans as weak prey now spoke of them with the respect reserved for the most. Formidable warriors in known space, the human who thought he was just protecting his ambassador had instead protected the future of his entire species. His head would never hang on anyone's wall, but his example would hang in the halls of memory forever.